What I notice on television is that there are certain characteristics that certain people, certain stereotypical people have on television. For instance, all businessmen, if it's an adventure show, are evil, murderous, hypocritical, cheating, scoundrels. If it's a situation on television, and
I just want to know whether they are or they're not.
Well,
is it a true delineation of them?
Oh yeah, I mean, I didn't. It's not. It's the book is not supposed to be fiction.
No, I don't mean is that the way they
She
are.
wants to know if you know a businessman who is not a murderer.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Oh sure. No.
Stand by. I'll need you again.
No, that it seems to me is not a true delineation of them. And similarly, on television, all small towns are evil, vicious places where the big city innocent goes, his car breaks down.
That is a common trope in particularly in horror, right? Where the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, The Hills Have Eyes, Wrong Turn, all this trope where these innocent people from the city, right, end up in this small town, and it just so happens that everyone there are cannibals who want to eat the flesh from your skin. Very much, of course, it paints the big city as something to aspire to, and the small town is something to actually get away from. But so again, none of this is coincidence. And interestingly enough, a lot of these the crime thrillers and so on are consumed by women, right? So in the article here, where the author says, these things are inevitable, it's very much not. This is manufactured. It's something that you've been fed for decades, and you've been told how and what to think.
And he gets caught in a web of murder and kidnapping and extortion. And all military men are, if it's an adventure show, are planning for a neo-Nazi takeover, and if it's a sitcom, they're buffoons. On crime shows, the sitcom buffoon. I did a video recently, I think the last video that I did, addressing some of the tropes that are sort of damaging to modern storytelling. And one of them being this, I highlighted anime in that video, where it pushes this trope of the submissive man, like Goku and Chi-Chi, where Goku is constantly being berated, or Ed from Full Metal Alchemist, where he's being yelled at or slapped or hit in the face with a wrench by Winry. The constant berating and abuse to the male character, which obviously, again, people like to dismiss to say it's not a big deal. If it wasn't a big deal, why is it we do not see it in reverse? Why is Ed not abusing Winry in the same manner, or Goku abusing Chi-Chi in the same manner, or Vegeta and Bulma? It's there for a reason. So to say it's not a big deal is just complete absurdity, right? So the damage that this does for the male-female dynamic, and we see that playing out, right? In Japan, it's worse than anywhere else, where the women, of course, after consuming this kind of content, now see their own men as weak and submissive and effeminate, and so they don't wish to have kids with those men. And the men themselves have bought into this narrative as well, that they are the characters in these anime that should be yelled at, should be beaten, and should be submissive and subdued, and not recognizing that you are making yourself unavailable to the average woman in Japan, because she now sees you as a weak man. And we've seen this happening in the West as well. And again, they are also now in the US below replacement levels for the population. And we cannot say that the stories that we've been consuming, the narrative that we've been pushing to push this divide between men and women, subvert the gender roles. We cannot say that these things had no impact on that. It absolutely does. Criminal is almost always a middle class, so well-to-do person of the majority group. There are almost no poor people portrayed as committing crimes. The criminals, even if a poor person has committed a crime, he has been forced into doing it by a businessman or some other
middle-class seeming person. There are no useful or vital religious figures on television. They're all either buffoons or kind of helpless fuddy-duddies. There is this kind of overwhelming
Those 2 points are really interesting. I'm not a particularly religious person, but I do recognize certain virtues or morals that we do need to uphold in society, right? And Christians typically espouse that. I say typically because conservatism, as it is now, is sort of a far cry from where it should be. Um, but it is interesting to note that in a lot of media now that the narrative is that it's become cool um, to sort of disparage Christianity and elevate everything else. And likewise with the depiction of the poor as somehow um, people who are victims of the system, which obviously this can happen, but what we're discussing here is this constant narrative being pushed that no one has accountability or personal responsibility, and that does, of course, again play out in society. We see this these movements to defund the police, Black Lives Matter. Interestingly, all movements that have been founded and pushed by women. Again, it comes back to the female empathetic nature and seeking to find a target for that empathy. And if they cannot find one or have one via kids, they will try to create one.
stereotyping of certain power centers and power groups in the society as either bad or foolish. And then there are certain groups which are very good. For instance, policemen on the beat are always very good.
How about newspaper publishers?
Well, they used to be bad, but now they're good. Now there's one show in which there's
Post-Watergate.
Now they're bad
That's right.
again.
Mr. Stern, while you're talking, I'm
It's
wondering
interesting how
what
that
category I
plays,
come.
doesn't it? Now they're
Well,
bad
You're not a
again.
sitcom.
Well, I know, but it touches me. I think that's a lot of baloney. I really do. I mean, you mean to tell me that millions of people are such idiots that they're going to watch
Yes.
pictures or
Most
stories,
people are
whatever it is,
stupid or
that portray
indifferent, but,
people,
yes.
stereotypes constantly?
Well, I'm not.
Businessman who's
This
always
is
evil?
this is absolutely happening without any question at all. And you may call it baloney, but I watch television, and the people who
You don't watch the same shows
let
I
me
do.
just say that even the people who make television, even the Gary Marshalls and Norman Lears of Hollywood, do not really dispute that this
Well,
stereotyping
then they
goes
are
on.
shameful.
They know. We've all seen a video with Larry Fink from BlackRock, where he's speaking about this this social experiment that he himself has been pushing, but he's trying to distance himself from it, saying that it's not. This DEI initiative is not working, and so we need to move away from that. But this is something that you ushered in, and in my mind, he's just looking for a way to bend to know to create the problem and then sell the solution. So now he's the solution to the problem that he created in the first place, and he can now benefit from it, right? But yeah,
I don't. My point is that
they're
they're
all
not
aware of
virtuous
that is
businessmen.
happening,
Also,
and they
my
know
book
it.
had nothing to do with soap operas or whether the shows are good or bad or fun to watch or boring to watch. The point is just that there is an enormous amount of kind of background noise on these TV shows, which is a fully alternate reality, or maybe I should say alternative reality, of American life. People watch TV so much that it's like a second life for them, and in this second life, conditions are very different from what they are in
Yeah.
real life. That is in real.
And I think this is pertinent, particularly when it comes to the whole girl boss narrative. There are so many clips going around now where of women um having spent the last several decades being told that they are as strong as men, they're as capable of men as men. There are women who genuinely believe, deluded enough to believe that they're able to compete with men because this is something that they've been inundated with for decades and decades. That this is something that they can actually do, only to attempt to do it in real life and quickly run into a wall when reality comes into the picture.
real life, one occasionally finds a businessman who is not plotting to murder his go-go dancer girlfriend. On TV, if a standard episode of Starsky
They just
and
don't pass
Hutch,
the screen test.
right? On TV, a standard episode of Barnaby Jones or Starsky and Hutch will be that a go-go dancer has been murdered. And there are 3 suspects. And one is her boyfriend, who has just gotten out of jail after serving 20 years for murder. And the other one will be the janitor who cleans up the club, and he is a heroin addict. And the other one will be the head of the local utility company.
And guess
who
which
stops
one
to
is
go
the
for a drink
murderer?
on his way to the train. Now, invariably, the killer will be the head of the local utility company. And this is a
Victimhood,
reality
yeah.
which it seems to on TV, which it seems to me tends to screw up most people's perceptions of real life. I often think that
I think it goes deeper than that, because what this points to is again, the deconstruction of male maturity, right? Because it's saying that the men who are leaders, the men who are with power, are the men who you cannot trust, right? But you can trust the other men. And this is again a narrative that's just been pushed and pushed and pushed to the point where this is something that women have taken to believe, that male power somehow means corruption. Men setting boundaries, or anything of that nature. The patriarchy is evil. Is what it boils down to. And so in these TV shows that he speaks about, it's always the men with power that are portrayed as evil.
a lot of people's anger at the oil companies is based upon the fact that all they've seen on TV are villainous, scheming, heartless businessmen. So they begin to think that all businessmen in real life
How
are
about
like
that,
that.
Sultan?
Well, I mean, I don't know what kind of movies he's been watching or on television.
Well, he just mentioned
I know
Barnaby Jones
I
and
know what he
Starsky
said.
and Hutch.
I don't know much about go-go girls. Maybe they should be murdered. I don't know. I don't know. Are the go-go girls the ones that?
I like
go-go
her.
girls?
So I think on TV they dance topless. But I mean, they don't show them dancing
Well,
topless.
I think that a topless bathing suit or anything else is really killing the graces and romance of sex, but that's beside the point.
No, not
That is
entirely.
true.
Well, I mean, no, but
Well, romance or
the
relationships,
fact
it
is
is.
that styles change. I really think that sex without romance is a kind of a dull bore. Would you say?
Fair point.
I understand your point.
That's all I asked for.
Yeah.
I watch MASH. I watch Barney Miller.
Well, MASH is a perfect example of what the book is about, because one of the parts of the book is that on television, military men are in two different categories. If they are enlisted men or draftees, they are saintly, virtuous people. If they are professional military officers, they are killers. Their whole aim in life is to kill
That's
and
not
torment
so of
people.
MASH.
Oh, it is absolutely
No, it
true
is
of
not.
MASH. In MASH,
No,
the
it
people
isn't.
who are the
officer
heroes...
in charge is a very nice guy.
But he is
He
a
writes his wife
but he is
every week.
But he is a draftee. All the people in the mobile surgical hospital are draftees. The people who come over from headquarters are only concerned with bombing civilians. MASH is the absolutely perfect example of how on television a professional army man is 1 inch away from being an SS man.
Yeah, he's absolutely right. And this, again, as I've said, it's about the subversion of male power and masculinity. It is the idea that men with power are corruptible, and men should not have power for fear of that. So this was a really interesting one, especially that interview. I would encourage you guys to watch the full length interview. I will put the link down in the description. But yes, this issue that China attempts to tackle, of the depiction of certain gender roles, particularly men being portrayed as women or in an effeminate manner. They've taken action to try to address that by instituting a certain guidelines that men need to be portrayed in certain ways. And at a first glance, I'm tempted to say, obviously there are different governing bodies in China versus in the West. China is more, authoritarian in how they will address certain things, while the West is obviously democratic. But in hindsight, it's not that much different, right? Because I was going to say the West has um, very little power to sort of address this issue. But the these narratives and check boxes for DEI and so on that have been pushed, the public largely had no say in any of these things. This was largely decided by those in the private sector, and they have said that their films and television, films and TV series must include these things. And of course, the Hollywood elites, have capitulated and said, yes, they will include these things, and they have all these requirements that need to be met. On the Oscars web page, they have a list of criteria that has to be met in order for the films to even be considered for nomination. Different governance in the West, but the media and entertainment industry is still very much controlled, and it's still there are still people who are making these decisions on our behalf without our consent, and they're telling us that this is what we must consume. So we can no longer say, look at China. Their approach is unethical because they're mandating a lot of these changes, because a lot of the things that are being pushed in the West are also being mandated or being mandated. No one asked the public for them, but they're being told they must include them. And if they want to work, they must have certain views on these subjects. So it's not very different, unfortunately. But at the very least, China has taken some action towards addressing the issue. And however we decide to take action in the West, we do need to take some steps to address it, because as we can see very clearly, this is having an impact on Western stories, whether it's literature, film, TV, video games. They're all going to fall to the same. They're all going to fall apart. They're all going to fall apart, trying to push this narrative, because in the end, whether man or woman, the stories that we consume, those that we relate to, those that are memorable, tend to be the ones that portray us in our traditional gender normative roles. Right? There's a reason why Hollywood is remaking all these stories from 20, 30 years ago. These very stories with gender roles, with traditional gender roles. But then when they try to adapt them, they then try to change them, and then those stories fail. Why are they failing? Because that's not what the audience wants. So we do need to, try to address this before it's too late. I think over the past few years since the publication of this article, we can look at China's entertainment industry, and I think that it has improved for the better. They released, I think it was Neza, is the name of the animated film that cost 2 billion just in China's market alone, right? I don't believe I think it cost 2 billion before it was even released internationally. China managed to do that because they recognize the importance of these stories, and and upholding these virtues and values associated with each gender, and elevating that in their film, TV, and other stories. And that is something the West seems to not yet understand. And my hope is that eventually we get there, because for those of us who love these stories, we need to get back to form, right? And we need to get back to telling memorable stories. All right, guys, that is it for today. I'll leave you there. Be sure to let me know if there are any other subjects that you'd like me to discuss on the channel here. So thanks for stopping by, and I'll see you for the next one.